The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And a good Monday afternoon to you. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne as you are watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Claibs, how you doing?
I am almost as well as you are. By the way, I want to stop the show right now and compliment you on your attire today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gone is the polo or the T-shirt and the cap, a nice tie and a nice shirt. You said you were going to do it, so I'll tip my cap to you. It's a very nice ensemble that you've decided to partake in today.
I'll do it. You know what? I'll do it. I'll keep it going at least through the entire month of December, and then we'll see.
I will
where
do the
things
same
are.
thing. I will do the same thing.
We'll dress up in the
scare
Christmas
somebody with our outfit.
Yeah, the Christmas holiday season. We'll dress up. Now that polo, though, I mean, you talk like I'm just throwing something off the rack that I got at a golf tournament. I mean, that is a polo that Jamie was kind enough to send us from Munganass, St. Louis back here. One of our sponsors. Well, he sent me. He sent me four. Yeah, he sent me four. He hasn't sent you any, but one of our sponsors. He sent them,
but I just didn't get them because somebody else is wearing them now. That's all.
Also sponsored by Ameren, Illinois, and the home loan expert Ryan Kelly. Before we get into that, I want to wish you a happy belated birthday. That was on Saturday.
Yeah.
Won't ask the year for it, but I trust that you took a good Thanksgiving into a good birthday weekend.
You know what? I was blessed to be born around Thanksgiving, and my birthday's fallen on Thanksgiving a few years. And this one was a different one, obviously, because of COVID. It was kind of quiet. I just kind of chilled, spent some time with my significant and the dogs, and I was very happy. Although she treated me to, we were going to get takeout from Cafe Napoli in Clayton. And so we had to get that and ran into Tony Piatoso and talked to him for a bit. And our old buddy Charlie Tuna was coming through there as well on pickup detail. So it was a good night to see Tuna. And like I said, I spent some great quality time with my significant, and I'm very thankful. You know, I think anybody who has a birthday in the year of 2020 that can live to talk about it, I think that means that they're blessed, because as we've seen so many people that aren't part of what we do in 2020 because of COVID, it's been an incredible year. Not all of it has been good, and I'm very thankful and appreciative, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, I've heard stories of Charlie Tuna at Cafe Napoli, so I don't know.
This is the one in Clayton.
Okay,
not like out in Chesterfield, but he was civil. You know, and Tuna and I, I've known Tuna since I was a kid.
He was about 30 then, right?
Yeah, I've known Tuna. Oh gosh, since the 60s. And he was older than me, but yeah, I mean, we go way back. Our families, my dad knew Charlie as a kid, and so it's been a good relationship.
Yeah, I've gotten to work with him many times over the years, and I've done plenty of draft shows with him. We've done radio shows, and then up until COVID, I was working with him every Thursday night. I was doing shows with him from Schnucks every Thursday night from about August to March of the 2019 and 2020. So him and Dr. Rick were hanging out with them every week doing stuff over there on 590. You mentioned the birthdays in 2020 and the many people that we lost, and we lost a St. Louis legend this past week as the former Rams coach, former Big Red coach Jim Hanifan passed away at the age of 87. And I think that if you think Rams football here in St. Louis, one of the many names that come to mind is that of Coach Hanifan.
Well, you can go further back than that. I mean, he was a former head coach for the St. Louis football Cardinals. He was a line coach for the Cardinals. Also coached in Philadelphia and the Atlanta Falcons, and really helped me a lot. I knew him in the early stages of my career, and I was a huge fan of line play for some reason. I didn't care about running backs and all that. I mean, I think the key to any successful team is how well you play on the line. And he would let me watch film with him. He had great stories. So I'm covering him for the Cardinal, for KMOX, and I'm writing for the St. Louis American. And we used to have, you know how they have the weekly press conference in a big room and coaches on the podium. Well, back then it was you'd be in the PR director's office. Jim would sit behind the desk. We'd sit on the couches and a few chairs. I mean, there wasn't more than 10 people. And he was so good in explaining what was going on. But if he got pissed off at you, he had no problem lighting you up. And I've got a couple of stories I'll share with you. So the Cardinals, football Cardinals, had just hired former baseball Cardinal general manager Bing Devine. And Bing was going to kind of be a day-to-day guy, just kind of learn the business. So he decided to sit in on a press conference with Jim Hanifan. And we had the writer from the Post, writer from the Globe, Jim Holder, myself, Paul Alexander was at Channel 4. I don't even think Channel 5 or Channel 2 sent anybody. So, you know, we had a couple other guys that were in the room. So anyway, they keep asking him really kind of asinine questions, to be honest with you. They really didn't have anything to do with anything. But they wanted to feel like they had to ask questions. And so it almost lends you to believe that they didn't really know what they were talking about. So every time he would somebody would ask a question, Hanifan he smoked like a chimney. And he would try and give a educated answer. So with each time Bing Devine would ask, he said, well, I don't really know a lot about football. So, you know, Jim, don't worry about it. You know, you're fine. You can ask anything you want. So this goes on for about another 5 or 10 minutes. And now Hanifan's getting a little pissed. And so Bing says, hey, I got another question. Like I said, I don't really know a lot about football. And Hanifan says, oh, no, you're not the only so-and-so in here that doesn't know shit about football. And he says, how much football did you play? And he went around the room and asked every media person. I played football. Paul Alexander, who was at Channel 4, played football. He even asked the cameraman from Channel 4, did he play football? So the two beat writers had a combined a year and a half of JFL experience, and the rest of them had never played. And he looked at Jim and looked at Bing Devine and said, you see, I had to put up with this shit every week. He said, they don't know jack shit, just like that. And we're just like, and so at that point, Alexander and I kind of moved over to the other side of the room to make sure we were distinguished between these inexperienced athletes, alleged athletes. But he was a good man. He'd do anything in the world for his players. He was known to have a cocktail or two, even the night before a game. Dick Vermeil, one time had to get him out of jail one night. He had a DWI and had to go get Jim and bring him to the stadium the next day. But here was the thing about Jim Hanifan. He was so well respected around football. When teams would come in to play, there would always be somebody that would want to come over on the sideline and talk to him. Or when he became a broadcaster, Steve Savard tells a story about they would seek out Hanny. As respected of a man in football as I've ever encountered. And to show you how far back he goes, the great Don Coryell, they were in the Army together. And they played on Coryell coached the Army team at Fort Ord out in California. And that's how he met Hanifan. And that was 1958. And so when Coryell decided that he wanted to coach in the NFL, he hired Hanifan as his line coach, and the rest is history. So the linkage for Jim Hanifan goes well before the Rams. Wonderful man, always great to see him, very well read, and a true friend. That I was telling you, when I was having dinner when I got the text that he died, and I had to stop for a minute and collect myself. And there were 3 people that were with me, and I just told them a brief history, and I said, I want to toast to Jim Hanifan. And ironically, I had a glass of Cabernet in my hand, and which was one of his favorite delights. And it really kind of got to me because I've seen a lot of people come and go this year, but Jim Hanifan was one of my favorite people.
Yeah, as soon as I saw the note, I think I saw Frank Cusimano's tweet about it. I texted Howard Balzer because I know how close he and H have been over the years, and everything that H has done for football in St. Louis. And every time that I ever had a chance of talking or interviewing Coach Hanifan, it was because Howard Balzer was right there. And it was last August or September when Isaac Bruce had his Gridiron Gala at the Four Seasons, and we're sitting there and we're having guys, former Greatest Show on Turf members, come through one after the other, sit down with us as we were doing a show then. And we had Mike Martz and Jim Hanifan sit down with us at the same time. And it was Hanifan talking, and Mike Martz sat there and just took in every story that Hanifan was telling that night. And it was pretty cool to see that happen at that time, knowing how, interesting Mike Martz is of a guy to talk, that he was just still in awe of someone like Jim Hanifan. And I remember when I first started getting into radio and was listening to Rams games, it was right when Hanifan started on the broadcast, and that's a voice that you just don't forget. That's
gosh darn.
So
I'll tell you one thing about that so-and-so. And let me tell you, if you roll out a name of a player that he didn't like or a coach that he didn't like, he had no problem airing those guys out too. But man, oh man. And you just said something, Joe, about stories. The two greatest storytellers, now it's just one in St. Louis, are Mike Shannon and Jim Hanifan. And one day I had lunch with those two, and to just sit there and listen to them go back and forth. This was at the old restaurant, and it was just such a hoot. And Jim and Mike had become good friends over the years. They didn't see each other a lot, but when they saw each other, oh boy, make sure you got plenty of time, because you're going to hear one of these stories at least 3 times. And then once the beverages started to flow, it really became a treat.
Yeah, rest in peace to Jim Hanifan, 87 years old, passed away over the weekend. Hey, we are powered by Ameren, Illinois, and just remember that. Do you remember Ameren, Illinois, a sponsor here, and everything they do for the Illinois side, also throughout the entire region, as you're driving around looking at those Christmas lights and everything else that you're using Ameren, Illinois for over the holiday season. Glad to have them on board with us here on claibsonline.com. Claibs, we usually will start with something Cardinal related, something football related here on the show, but I got to say, it's SLU in Illinois basketball. It's college hoops to kick off the stories today. And I think the college basketball season snuck up on a lot of people, but now that we're kind of getting into it, and you see that we have 2 pretty special programs within, 100-mile radius or so of St. Louis, with the Illini up in Champaign and SLU right here in our neighborhood. Those are 2 very, very good teams. And I don't know right now what the season's going to look like. I don't think anybody does. I think we're going to have random games popping up all season long, and whatever 2 teams can make work, they're going to make work. And come March, we'll figure it out. Maybe all the teams will get together in Indiana and start playing tournament games, and we keep playing until everybody's knocked everyone else out. And I don't know what this year's going to look like, but I can tell you what, we're going to have fun watching those 2 teams for sure.
I would agree with you. I'm excited to watch their development. I'm still going to hold off, because I don't know if anybody knows who's good or not. And I can't go by the record, because in a lot of cases you haven't played anybody. But, I guess the telltale factor is you're destroying teams. Although St. Louis U and LSU was probably a more of a fair matchup. Both those teams scored over 80 points. But I've got to give it a little bit more time. But I think the excitement is well warranted, because I think what we've seen as far as the physical makeup of these teams and how they finished last year gives you a good feeling that they can really do some damage. I think the big challenge they're going to have is finding a comparable schedule that's not going to include a bunch of blood donors. I mean, the non-conference schedule, I think teams should be loading up on and try and play teams within your region within a bus ride, because there's no guarantee you're going to play a conference schedule. I mean, for St. Louis U to have to go out east on the road, I just don't know how that's going to happen in the age of COVID as we know it. And for those teams to come back to the Midwest for one game, it would be different if there were a couple of teams couple of teams that were in the area that were in the conference, but that's not the case. And poor Penn State and Rutgers and those schools in the Big Ten who have to find a way to come back here. I just think athletic directors should have thought this out a little bit more and quit putting on so many blood donors on the schedule. And for Missouri and St. Louis U to have over a week off is criminal because they could be playing each other. And the same thing can be said for some other schools in the area. But, I'm a little disappointed with the administrations in not being better suited to plan this out, knowing that, hey, baseball had to shorten the season, NBA shortened the season. Everybody shortened the season. We're going to start the season, and we better try and get as many in as we can while we can. Yeah, and they didn't do it.
I'm looking right now at SLU's upcoming schedule. They got, you looking at their December right now, they have 7 games lined up in the month of December. And like you mentioned, all of them are within a bus ride. You got Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Central Arkansas, Evansville, Indiana State, Minnesota, UMKC. And these are all, I really feel like you're just going to have these teams just kind of thrown on. They're just going to call up. If one of those teams happens to have a few positive tests, I can see the AD just call up and saying, okay, what can we make work? All right, we're going to make it work. And with college basketball, I don't think you're going to have the conferences stepping in and putting a stop to that like we've seen with college football. You remember when Nebraska wanted to go play a game? They just wanted to play a game. It wasn't going to matter who they played. What was it? I don't even think it was a Division I AA team. They were trying to play, and they just wanted to get a game in.
Yeah, but
because they didn't want to have a bye week for no reason. And the Big Ten stepped in and said, "Nope, you can't do that." I don't think that's going to happen in college basketball.
Oh, I think it already is, though. And going back to Nebraska, here's why I side with the Big Ten. Why are you going to go out and play a game that's not going to mean anything to anybody as far as ranking is concerned and really counting against your record as far as having a chance to be in postseason play? If I look at St. Louis U, you couldn't tell me you couldn't trade the 2 Arkansas teams for the Arkansas, or to trade the 2 Arkansas teams for an Illinois State or maybe someone else within a driving distance other than 2 inferior teams. I just think you had to do a better job. And here's the thing, Joe. They knew this was going to happen. I mean, there was no indication not telling them that they were going to have some concerns about scheduling and people being healthy. And I just think that they kind of blew a golden opportunity to be the forerunner to say, hey, look, we're not only playing, we're playing teams that you recognize. I got news for you. 85 to 90% of the teams or the SLU fans couldn't find Pine Bluff or Central Arkansas on the map if they got put out of the bus in the city limits. I mean, that's just how insignificant these programs are. And if there's always been an issue with St. Louis U, and I think Missouri's guilty of it also, like a lot of schools, you go find these blood donors that don't do anything for you. Okay, so you hang 100 on them, or you put 85 or 90 on them, and the manager gets in the game. Doesn't do anything for your record. Now, it does do one thing. Those universities that come to give blood, they get a big paycheck, and it helps their athletic department. But in this day and age, if you're trying to gain credibility and status where ranking and seeding perhaps could come into play, you got to do a better job.
Yeah, I'm looking through at the Illinois schedule. Illinois, by the way, they are ranked 5th now in the country. As I look through and see what they have lined up for the season, and it would be nice. I mean, it would be nice to see an Illinois SLU game at some point, and maybe by some circumstance we get that this year. But hey, I'll tell you what, though, Illinois is playing some better teams. They have Baylor, Duke, and coming up on the schedule before that, Mizzou bragging rights game, a different looking bragging rights game coming up on December 12th this year. Different date and different venue. Yeah, as the Mizzou won the coin flip and they get the game for that. So again, we're what, 2 games, 3 games in for some of these teams. No telling what's going to happen. I don't understand how you have coaches that are testing positive and yet they're getting sent out and the rest of the team still playing. How you're not going to expect the players to test positive as well. I don't know how any of that's working or how they're justifying any of that. They're just making it happen. And we're seeing that in college football. Ohio State, this is where the problem is right now for college football and where it looks bad for the NCAA is that you have a powerhouse like Ohio State, who the cases are so out of control that you will not be able to justify putting them in any kind of major playoff bowl game when the season ends because of how few games they're actually going to end up playing.
No, you're right. And I know that they're Ohio State. I don't care. You didn't play anybody. Didn't play. Can't put you in it because you're Ohio State. And that's the risk they ran. And I know that there was a lot of going back and forth about we got to play. Okay, now you got a chance to play. Here's what happens. So you got nobody to blame but yourself because Ohio State thought they were hot stuff. And they were the ones who were crying the loudest, them in Nebraska. Nebraska's terrible. Ohio State's not going to get enough games in to qualify for the playoffs. And all for what? Greed. And I, you know what? I don't even feel sorry for them. They got what they asked for.
Yeah, the Ohio State, but they are 4-0 right now on the season. You look around them in the rankings. Alabama's 8-0, Notre Dame's 9-0, Clemson is 8-1. So you look around and all these teams playing 8 or 9 games. They don't have an argument. They really don't have an argument. And now they played last Saturday. They didn't play this weekend. They had the game canceled against Maryland.
They got
this
Michigan
weekend.
State and Michigan left.
And I don't see how that game against Michigan State gets played this week. They're not going to have enough guys.
Well, again, be careful for what you ask for, and they're getting just what they deserve as far as I'm concerned. And the whole thing has just been a sham. The Pac-12 is even worse. And, I understand that there was a financial issue here, the TV money and everything else, but this is the price you're going to pay. And I would have thought that the basketball side, who had more time to prepare, would have done a better job. I'm not going to rehash the scheduling again, but there could have been a way they could have made this into a regional event this year where teams would play within a bus ride compared to flying across the country. And believe me, there are good teams in every time zone and within a bus ride of every good school. All right. So there was no excuse for them not being able to do it. And this whole thing about, we're ready to play. Apparently Notre Dame was like, hey, we'll play anybody. And Travis Ford called me. I haven't heard back from him. So, I mean, they have to be careful on who they wish for because, St. Louis, you could walk in there and upset their situation. Oh, by the way, Notre Dame's not going anywhere anyway because they don't play anybody.
10 games canceled in college football this weekend. So
5 of the top 25 teams didn't play.
Yeah, so that's not good. You know who did play this weekend though? There were 2 pretty significant happenings in college football this year. Is that your computer or mine that's doing that?
That was me.
That was you? Okay.
Yeah.
First, we'll start locally. We'll start with Mizzou Vanderbilt. History was made as Sarah Fuller kicked off for Vanderbilt, the first woman to appear in a Power 5 football game. And it wasn't her fault that she didn't appear any more than that opening kickoff because Vanderbilt just they couldn't score. Lose 41-0 to Mizzou, and then Derek Mason gets fired after the game. But a historic kickoff nonetheless.
Yeah, it was. And I'm glad she got the recognition. I don't know where this goes from here. But I think when you have breakthroughs like this, and let's face it, she bailed them out. I mean, they didn't have anybody else to go to because the soccer players, the men's team was already gone. They'd already thrown them out off campus. So she was the last person standing, and I commend her. And I know some people say, well, her kick wasn't very good. Yeah, it was just what they wanted. It was a pooch kick to the right. They didn't want a chance of a big return or anything, and they thought defensively they could keep slow Missouri down. So she did exactly what they needed to do. If you think that she couldn't kick a legitimate distance, then you really aren't paying attention to what women's soccer players can do.
Right. And that's, there probably wasn't much practice either, kicking a football outside of a soccer ball for her either.
I'm sure she's
right.
done it before, but not to the extent of what she would do during a weekly practice session. You're right.
When you add in the timing, the snap, the place, and everything that goes into that too, but still, Vanderbilt was so bad that we never got a chance to see it.
Yeah,
it didn't make a difference. So now this is the second time this year that we've seen Mizzou. We've seen them go in and play. I guess Grim Reaper would be the right word to fire a head coach for an SEC school. I did not think we were going to see that many firings this year. I thought it was going to have to be a very severe case to fire a coach this year, given all the circumstances. But now you've seen South Carolina and now Vanderbilt both without a head coach.
Yeah, you'll probably see another guy. You'll probably see Gus Malzahn get it at Auburn. So that's going to be at least 3 coaches from the SEC.
Jim Harbaugh's not coming back.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's coming back. Those are the ones that stand out because, you remember a lot of good programs have already filled their jobs from last year. Michigan State's got a new guy. Northwestern's guy is safe. Lovey, I don't know. That could be an interesting decision to make. You look at the rest of the SEC, you got new coaches at Ole Miss and in Mississippi. They like the guy at Tennessee and Kirby Smart's doing a good job at Georgia, although I think they're a little disappointed in their growth. And I think the rest of them, I can't think of anybody else who I would say is in deep trouble of a major program.
Yeah, Arkansas just got a new coach too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just got a new one as well. So I think we'll get to the Harbaugh situation in a second. I do want to mention though the other kind of historic game this weekend was the Buffalo-Kent State game, as Buffalo wins 70-41. And it wasn't like they were airing it out because it was Jarrett Patterson, Claibs, 409 yards rushing with 8 touchdowns.
What were they playing with, 10 men or 9 on defense?
I mean, when you're running the ball that well, you can't even run the clock out.
True. You can't even have a running clock. The skunk rule does not apply here.
Right. You're trying to take it easy on them, and they can't stop you doing that.
Well, they got everything they deserve then. If they weren't capable enough of stopping them, they shouldn't be on the field with them.
No.
And those things happen, okay? Those things happen on that level of football. And again, we don't know how COVID-stricken the other team was either. Maybe they were short some starters. So there may be some extenuating circumstances that come with that.
Right. I got to see a game when I think it was my senior year. A friend of mine, a junior at Western Illinois, went on to be on the practice squad for a few NFL teams. A guy by the name of Herb Donaldson. Watched him in a game.
CBC.
Yeah, he 328 yards and 6 touchdowns in a game against Indiana State running the ball. And I think about 280 of those came in the second half. So they were just handing him the ball and he was going. And the thing is they needed every one of those at the time because the defense wasn't doing shit that game either. So but to see that, to know what I saw, and then to know that this guy added on another 80 yards to that, plus 2 more touchdowns. That's one of those you just sit back and you enjoy what you're seeing as you just keep scrolling through the record book, seeing what records being broke.
You don't think he slept well that night, do you?
God, no. My goodness. Hey, NFL this past week. We still have 2. Today's Monday. We have 2 more games left on the schedule for this week. You mentioned we mentioned Jim Harbaugh probably not coming back to Michigan next year. He could stay in that same state though, because now Detroit has a job opening. Matt Patricia fired, as that makes 3 coaches so far in the NFL this year that have been let go. Down in Atlanta, drawing a blank on what his name was down in Atlanta that got fired.
Quinn.
And, and then the Texans and Bill O'Brien.
The Jets will make a change.
They have to, right?
Yeah, they have to make a change.
0-11 right now.
You know what? I think the Bears probably ought to make a change. They're horrible.
They are, and they're still in the playoff hunt.
I know. Jacksonville's going to make a change.
Didn't they just make a change?
They just fired the general manager.
What was it last year? Was it they went to fire the head coach and they gave him another year on top of that?
Yeah.
And you look at the teams like that. I mean, I get, the 3 teams that have openings right now have legitimate quarterbacks. Some are paying their quarterbacks way too much, but they have quarterbacks in place. But you mentioned teams like the Jets or Jacksonville and the Bears. Those are 3 teams that are in desperate need of quarterbacks. So you look at the 6 situations that are probably going to be open. And I off the top of my head, I can't think of any others that might be there.
Dallas could be a problem.
For the amount of time that they gave Jason Garrett, you can't fire Mike McCarthy after 1 year.
You don't want to do that again. And I just think that was a bad marriage. Now, granted, it's easy to say, well, he never even had a chance to work with his players. You know, they didn't even have mini camps or anything. And that might save him.
And his quarterback got hurt.
Yeah, and Vic Fangio could be in some trouble in Denver because that's not going well. So, I mean, you have maybe five coaching openings, maybe 6 this year.
You mentioned teams not having quarter. I mean, the Broncos legitimately did not have a quarterback yesterday. They played the entire game yesterday without a quarterback. As if you missed it yesterday, their one of their quarterbacks tested positive for COVID, and then they found out the other 4 quarterbacks on the roster were with him in a room doing a video session, not wearing masks. Therefore, all of them were exposed, and due to NFL rules, all of them became ineligible. So they went with a practice squad wide receiver who last played quarterback as a sophomore at Wake Forest, and put him back there behind center. So you had on one side, you had Taysom Hill, who maybe a quarterback by name only. Definitely not, probably not his best position. And then on the other side, you had Kendall Hinton for the Broncos as the quarterback, while Jameis Winston is just standing there holding the clipboard.
And he's saying to himself, I'm better than all these guys combined. You know, the Broncos tried to sign their quality control assistant and let him quarterback, and the league wouldn't let him do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's their quality control guy?
I don't know, but they say he was the best guy of anybody they could find.
They have Elway up in the box.
Elway, you know what? Elway has had a big arm. I don't think he could probably get hurt. I think he had some surgeries here recently, but your point is valid. It's amazing that they couldn't find anybody else, and I'm sure Colin Kaepernick is somewhere sitting there saying, "Huh, okay." Yeah, I know I can do better, and I don't even know the system.
Rob Calabrese was the name of the assistant coach that they wanted to sign. He's been their offensive quality control coach for the last 2 years. And
where did he play?
I'm looking through here to see what his past was, and it does not say what qualifications he had to possibly be a quarterback.
Well, there you go.
I'm not seeing anything in this. You're telling me here, but okay. This is probably a dumbass question. It's a very big hypothetical. You mentioned Elway's surgeries. You mentioned the big arm. At one point in the game, Hinton yesterday was 1 for 9, had thrown 2 interceptions, and had 3 interceptions dropped. You put Elway back there in shotgun and just have him stand there and throw 3-4 yard passes. Could Elway have done better than that?
No, because the offensive line isn't that good. That's the other thing you got to take into account. Their offensive lines had some problems all year long, and all they would do is get somebody killed. And I think if not for Hinton being able to be slightly mobile, he would have been killed. Listen, it was an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to the Broncos. It's an embarrassment to the league. And it ought to also let people know, for all the armchair quarterbacks who think they could do better, to see a guy in that situation come off the street and see how tough it was for him should tell you how hard it is to play in this league.
Right. And that goes to anybody that was, any high school varsity quarterback, that was the best that they did. I mean, you're talking about a guy here who was a backup quarterback in the ACC up until his sophomore year before he changed positions, that went into an NFL game and could not do it.
I guess the thing, though, Joe, surely somebody had played quarterback somewhere in high school or college where that's the best they could do within that organization.
I'm sure there were plenty. I'm sure that there were. I mean, you
that's
look
the
at
best
it, but
they
it's
could
the
come
same.
up with.
It's the same. I mean, I would put it the same as in baseball. You look at all these pitchers that can't hit worth a damn, that hit 0.90 on a season and look terrible at the plate. At one point, they were probably the cleanup hitter in high school and the best hitter on the team, hitting 10, 15 home runs in a high school season. And now it's been so long that they have no clue how to swing a bat. And it's the same thing here, that you look at how many of these guys in Pop Warner High School were the quarterbacks for their team. And then they went on to college and somebody said, you know what? you're not that great of a quarterback, but you're big. I bet I can make you a middle linebacker. And, 3-4 years of doing nothing but lifting and working out to be a middle linebacker, you're going to lose every skill you had playing quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's something that you have to do with some sort of consistency.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then this is what you have in return.
Right. Wasn't Brian Urlacher, wasn't he like a punt returner in college before he went on to be a Hall of Fame linebacker?
And I'm not sure, but that wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it just, you change over the years. So tonight you have the Monday Night Football game, which is the Eagles against the Seahawks. And then tomorrow night, and that's where, I think there is some anger amongst Denver players, fans, coaches, front office, whatever, because Denver on Saturday night found out that all of their quarterbacks were ineligible to play, and they still had to play on Sunday, where the Ravens strength and conditioning coach apparently went out, infected half the team, and they got to move their game from Thursday to Tuesday, and then got to move their game that's supposed to be this coming Thursday to next Monday. So the NFL has moved the Ravens schedule all around while they made the Denver Broncos play without a quarterback.
I think there's a couple of things that come with this. First of all, nobody cares about the Broncos. They just want to get the game on the schedule and get it over with. The second thing is maybe the carelessness of the Bronco players, not the strength guy, but the Bronco players was kind of a punishment, because they knew better. They knew better, and I think it was more of a punishment than anything else in forcing them to play. And, to forfeit, that doesn't do you any good either. So, because now you had a team that traveled all the way to Denver to play, and now they're not going to play. They were going to make them play, and just too bad. And I know somebody said, well, they don't have a quarterback. Well, what happens if they don't have a left tackle? What happens if they don't have a safety? I mean, every player on the field is important, and if you don't have one of those guys, your chances of winning are greatly reduced. So it didn't make a difference on what the position was. It was the fact that they were careless, and they paid a severe price for it.
So yeah, the Steelers-Ravens game Tuesday night, so no Thursday night football this week as they're moving the schedule all over the place. Hey, I want to mention our sponsor, Ryan Kelly, the home loan experts. If your mortgage rate's in the low twos still,
yes,
as we're sitting here today talking about it, Ryan Kelly, find him online at the homeloanexpert.com. Are you guys doing any more commercials coming up? You guys got any holiday themed commercials that he wants to get with you on?
I will look into that today, as a matter of fact, to see what his availability is.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's always wanting to do some of those some things around that. Get those, and we'll get them up on the website, because hey, we're what, 3 weeks away? 3 weeks away tomorrow from the start of the NBA season, as December 22nd is the tip off for that. So the NBA, we don't know who's playing on December 22nd, but at least we know that they have a plan in place. They announced this last week, the preseason games. It looks like every team's going to play about 4 games. I went and I
That's
looked.
all you need.
Yeah, I went and looked at the Grizzlies schedule. I looked where our buddy Rob Fisher was going to be, where he was going to be sent, and I think they have 2 games up in Minnesota that they're going to play, and then they come back down to Memphis, and they have 2 games there. They're just going to get 4 games out of the way, and they're going to get started. And the NBA this week is only releasing half of the schedule. They're going to release the first half of the schedule, see how things go, then they'll release the second half of the schedule. Something I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before. When the Major League Baseball, when they had the strike in, what year was it, when they had to take the first and second half, where the Cardinals missed the playoff? 81. So when they did that, how did they schedule the second half of the season? Was it already set? Did they just pick up where they left off,
or did they where they left off?
Okay, so the NBA might know what the whole season is going to look like, but right now they're only going with half the schedule in place, and that's what we're going to get this week.
Yeah, and you know what? I commend what they're doing. They're doing it slowly. They're trying to hold back as many prime games as they can in the hopes of getting fans in the arenas later, and making sure that they have some very good TV games to go along with it. This is all work in progress right now. So I think we have to just be patient. We've got an idea when it's going to start. and just it's going to truly be one day at a time for this whole situation.
And meanwhile, the NHL, I still have not heard a thing.
I don't think
on their
ESP
front.
doesn't play until February. They've got a labor issue they've got to resolve. I think if there was ever a sport that needs to have fans, it's the National Hockey League. So the longer they wait, maybe they play 60 games. Maybe they play 60 instead of the 80. And that way they move it back and they can get some fans in the arenas. I think the Canadian division will be just that. I don't think you'll see them cross the border. And I would think maybe by June or July, they would have their playoffs in place and get through the season, take their normal time off, and then try and start it up in October or November in 22.
Geez, yeah, it would be nice though to have some kind of announcement made or any kind of progress on that.
Because, but why do you need an announcement now? You're not.
It'd be nice to know that there's progress being made, because there have been so many times I think that the NHL has dropped the ball over the years that you're going to get fans moving away from that and finding something else because they don't want to lose another season again to their beloved sport. I
think you have a drop dead date. I don't think it's now. I think you can go well into December and not worry about having a date. You probably need to give your league 3 weeks notice, 4 weeks notice. Players are already skating and doing things. Okay. So that's not an issue. So I really think that what they need to do is make sure that they've got two plans, one with limited fans and one with fans. One that doesn't have fans, you don't even put that schedule on the table because it's not going to do you any good. You're not going to do the bubble again. You can do regional stuff. And that's what they've already discussed with regard to the Blues being in a regional conference. That's a good step in the right direction. But overall, to try and get too far out in front of this and things still unsettled doesn't do you any good, because now you got to backtrack and start over again. Just wait. Just stay patient. Anything
you're hearing as far as Major League Baseball goes?
Well, I've said last week we're going to play somewhere between 100 and 140 games. Mm-hmm. I think that this is a league that definitely will move things back, because there's no reason for them to open up a season in April when nobody's there. You can open up in May and have a good, healthy season. The weather will be better. Hopefully the vaccine would have more impact on your fans being able to come to the games, and you can create some sense of reasonable competition. I think the bigger issue that they're going to have is, how do you sell this to the players? Because the players want to get paid for 162, right? Which I think is not going to happen. So there's got to be some leeway here to make sure that they understand that, this is the best we can do. This goes back to something I said to you last week. Until the owners and players understand that they need to develop a partnership, they're not going anywhere. They've got to get that squared away and understand that both sides have something to lose.
And finally, before we get out of here, this past weekend we saw the match, the third match, Barkley and Mickelson against Steph Curry and Peyton Manning. Also, Roy Jones Jr. against Mike Tyson. Did you watch any of that?
I watched the Tyson. I'm sorry, I watched the golf. I didn't watch the Tyson thing. My daughter was trying to convince me to get it, and I was like, I'm not going to waste my time on this. And it's not anything against those guys, but I don't know where that would go from here. I mean, if you saw those two like I did in their prime, that's what you appreciate. For them to get in the ring and want me to spend money to watch them, I could probably when bars are open, you could probably see just as good of a fight on a bar parking lot if you had one that was open. So it didn't really move my needle as much as the golf did. And kudos to Charles Barkley, who changed his swing, and it was certainly noticeable and rewarding for him. Those things can be fun. But then when you watch him, you say, you know what, he shanks it just like I do, or he duck hooks it just like I do. And then the reality sets in that golf is a really hard sport to play if you're not a professional.
You ever play with Barkley?
Yes. He was terrible. He was so bad that I wouldn't watch him swing, because I would have it embedded in my mind that, okay, don't do this. It's like they say, well, you see the water over there? Yeah, don't hit it in the water. Or in baseball, the pitching coach comes out and tells the pitcher, hey, don't walk. Whatever you do, don't walk him. So you've got this negative thought already embedded in your head. And after like the first few swings, I just turned around and would look at something else. I would not watch him swing because it was awful. And he was terrible.
It's a little more fluid now. None of that.
No, it was. Hey, listen,
through
I tip my cap to it. He did a nice job, and we'll see where it goes from there.
He's done this before, though, hasn't he? Come out with a new swing before, and then he always goes back to that.
Yeah. I think Butch Harmon was working with him there for a while, and he changed his swing. And but you know what? It worked for him on Friday, so I tip my cap to him.
What do you got coming up this week?
Well, we're going to get started with this Hall of Fame thing on who should be in or who should be considered. That's going to take up a bulk of this week. We're going to get the podcast mill up and running here fairly soon. I'm just trying to look at different people who we don't hear from a lot, or people who have something to say. I mean, there's a lot of people in St. Louis that are talking to other people, okay? And I respect what they're doing. But I don't know if there's anybody locally that I haven't heard from that I want to hear from now. So I'm looking for people, if they are in St. Louis, maybe I've got an idea about 3 people who we normally don't hear a lot from that I would like to talk to. So I've just got some names in my head, and we're going to start reaching out today, and we'll have some people set up for next week for sure.
Absolutely. We will have all that, and then we'll have, starting tomorrow, December's this day in St. Louis sports history. Hey, I'll tell you this, we're going to start tomorrow with a Rick Majerus. No, I'm sorry, not Rick Majerus. Rick Majerus is a few days from now. Mizzou memory is tomorrow, but I know we have at least one Rick Majerus memory coming up this week for a milestone that he reached while he was with the SLU Billikens. So that we're hitting it all now. Now that we don't have the Cardinals every single day,
we'll find something somewhere.
Yeah, we have found something somewhere. And if we don't, luckily your birthday falls on a day, and we can bring up your birthday as this day in St. Louis sports history, like we did on Saturday, because I searched high and low for something, and we settled on your birthday as
It's always been a slow day unless it's Thanksgiving. Trust me.
So we have we'll have that coming up again. Claibsonline.com is where you can find all of that. Keep following us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you need to follow us, and all the podcast pages as well. If you missed any of this show, it'll be up on the podcast pages later on today. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, and also sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.